fellow bookworms, and welcome back to another video. So today I am filming my August TBR, and it is a very special month because this is the N.E.W.T.S. So for anyone who does not know what that is, it is the second half of the yearly magical readathon, which is going to be hosted by G from Book Roast. So if you are a fan of Harry Potter, then you are already familiar with what the magical readathon is. So for the students at Hogwarts during their, Molly wanted to say hi. During their 5th year, they take their OWL exams, which are their ordinary wizarding levels, and it helps them to get what they need in order to pursue whatever magical career it is that they want to pursue, whether or not it's going to be an Auror, a magical zoologist, a Hogwarts professor, etc. And then after that they take the N.E.W.T.S, and the N.E.W.T.S are a more comprehensive exam that they also have to take in order to pursue their career. So the OWLs took place in April, however I just completed mine in July, and now for August I will be taking my N.E.W.T.S. So my chosen profession is to be a librarian. For that, I needed to complete 3 different subjects, and I needed to complete Ancient Runes, Defense Against the Dark Arts, and History of Magic. I have also, because apparently I hate myself and want to pile on as much stress as I possibly can in 1 month, I will also be doing the N.E.W.T.S for Charms, Arithmancy, and Transfiguration. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the TBR because it is rather long. I currently have 17 books slated for the month of August, 18 if I can fit it in. That's right, I hate myself. Okay, so first we're going to start with Ancient Runes. For an A, you had to read a recommended novel, and for that I am reading A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Now this was recommended to me by other booktubers that I watch that include Books with Chloe and Brittany the Bibliophile. After reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, I was not going to continue with the series just because I wasn't really feeling it. But then everyone kept saying that this book is so much better than the first one. The love story is better, the dynamic is better, the characters are better, what have you. And I am just really hoping that it in fact is a lot better than the first one. So that is for my recommended read. For an E, you needed to read a book that is written in the past tense, and for that I chose How Not to Travel the World by Lauren Juliffe. Lauren Juliffe is a travel blogger, and she ended up writing a book, and this is that. So it's all about the fact that she had to get over her anxiety disorders along with several other things in order to be able to travel the world. And since I do follow her blog as well as the few YouTube videos that she has done and her Instagram feed, I decided to go ahead and get her book as well. So the next book that you needed to read to get an O was a book that has been on your TBR for ages, and for that I chose The Clockwork Angel. So this actually has been on my TBR reread list for ages just because I actually did read this when it was first released, and I have not read it since, and I did not read the 2 books that came after it. Now that I plan to read the other 2, I really need to reread this one because I will have absolutely no idea what's going on because I read this years ago, and other than the names of the characters, I've completely forgotten everything that happens. I mean, of course I'm familiar with the whole Shadowhunter world, but apart from that, that's all I know. So my next subject that I needed to complete for my N.E.W.T.S is Defense Against the Dark Arts. I also need to get an O in that. So the first book was that you needed to read one with a black cover, and for that I chose Mirage, and this is by Sumaya Dodd, or Dode. And of course, I mean, the Owl Crate exclusive dust jacket is black, and the actual book is black. So this follows the main character of Amani, who is kidnapped and taken to the royal palace so that she can serve as a body double for a very hated princess whose life is basically in peril at all times because, well, she's nasty and no one likes her. I know that there is a love story in this. I really do like reading diverse books, so there's this one. The next book that you needed to read for Defense Against the Dark Arts is inspired by Gilderoy Lockhart. So as soon as you read the prompt, you were supposed to write down the first title that sprang to mind from your TBR list, and that is a book that I recently hauled called Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. So this follows a group of 6 people as they plan an impossible heist. There are some love stories in here. There is also a lot of broody banter apparently, and a lot of just really great character development. And even though I only recently bought the book, the title itself has been on my list for ages. So it's finally time that I get down and read Six of Crows. And then for an O in Defense Against the Dark Arts, you needed to read a book that is set in England or written by an English author. And for that, I chose the book Mandy by Julie Edwards. Her maiden name is Andrews, Julie Andrews from The Sound of Music and from Mary Poppins. She, of course, is English, so that fulfills the prompt to read a book written by an English author. This is a children's book. It is about a young girl named Mandy who lives in an orphanage, or a group home rather, who discovers an abandoned cottage next door to her orphanage that she decides to fix up and live in, sort of like a clubhouse. Now, I did choose this mainly because I have a lot of really big books on my TBR, some of which are very deep. Not deep, but I know that Six of Crows has a lot of violence in it and a lot of angst, and after I read this, I'm going to need something light and fluffy. So this is my light and fluffy book. So the next subject that I needed to complete is a history of magic. So the first one that you needed to read was a fantasy book, and this I just hauled in my fairy loot, and it is Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. Now, the main reason that I put this on my list is, of course, because Fairy Loot is going to be having a read-along in the month of August, so I'm going to be reading this anyway, so I might as well have it on my N.E.W.T.S and get credit for it. Also, I really, really want to read this. The next thing that you needed to get in order to get an E in Defense Against the Dark Arts is to read a book that has a map. And for that, I am finally reading Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and it has a map. So I will be completing this for my N.E.W.T.S. And then the last thing that you needed to read to get an O is to read a old favorite. And for that, I chose another children's book. And this is one of those like little kid chapter books, and it is Arthur and the Scare Your Pants Off Book Club. Now, Arthur the Aardvark is a children's cartoon that I believe was on PBS that I absolutely loved, especially all the focus that they put on reading and going to the library. This is an incredibly short read. It's probably going to take me all of 10 minutes to get through it, but I wanted to have another light and fluffy book on my list just because, again, a lot of the books I'm reading are pretty expansive. So that completes my 3 required subjects for my N.E.W.T.S, but I went ahead and, just because I love to pile stuff on, I decided to do 3 extra credit subjects. So the first one is Charms, and to get an A, you needed to read a book with a gorgeous cover. That, of course, could only describe Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. Now, I just got this in a recent Owl Crate unboxing for the month of June, and I've been wanting to read it, except I had already had my TBR list planned out for the owls, so I went ahead and put this on my TBR for the N.E.W.T.S, and no one can deny that this is a freaking gorgeous cover. I even have a bookmark to match from an old, I'm pretty sure this came in a bookish box, and the colors match perfectly. To get an E, you needed to read a manga, and for that I am reading Sensual Phrase Volume 6 by Mayu Shinjo. So this follows the main character of, and I always forget her name, Aine, I think Aine, who falls in love with Sakuya, who is the lead singer for a band called Lucifer. So basically he's famous, he's rich, he's hot, and still in high school. And she is just a normal girl, although she, of course, I mean, she's gorgeous, and they get together. And the reason why I love Volume 6 so much is because only the very first part is about them, and then there are 2 additional stories following 2 other members of the Lucifer band, and that's why this is probably one of my favorite volumes of the book. And to get an O in charms, you needed to read a paperback, and for that I chose Matilda by Roald Dahl. This is definitely my favorite of all of Roald Dahl's books. It follows, of course, the main character of Matilda, who is a genius. She starts reading when she's at a very young age. She absolutely loves books, and then it turns out that she actually has telekinetic powers, the ability to move objects with her mind. And this is probably one of my favorite childhood books, and it's still one of my favorites, and again, light and fluffy. So the next subject that I needed to take for my extra credit was Arithmancy, and to get a in this, you needed to read a book that ends on an even number. And for that, I chose Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young. I've had this on my TBR list for ages, ever since I got it in an Owl Crate box, I want to say almost a year ago, and it has exactly 340 pages. So this is about sort of the Viking era, and it is about a warrior girl who ends up sort of across enemy lines when she discovers that her brother, who she thought was dead, has actually started fighting for their enemy. The next book that I needed to read was a standalone to get an E, and for that I chose Four Dead Queens by Astrid Schulte. So this is also from an Owl Crate box, and it follows a main character who is a pickpocket who accidentally stumbles upon a plot to murder the 4 queens of her land. So the land is divided up into 4 queendoms, each of which has its own queen. And it's all about the plot to have those queens murdered. So this really intrigues me. Also, after reading the synopsis and looking it up on Goodreads, it is a standalone novel. There is not a sequel coming. And the next book that you needed to read was one that was 350 pages or more, and for that I chose Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. So this is the main reason why I also have Clockwork Angel on my list, because I needed to remember what exactly is happening before I dive into Clockwork Prince. So this is a continuation of the story of Will, Tella, and Jem. It is set during Victorian times in London at the Shadow Hunters Institute that exists there. So other than that, I don't really know what happens in this book, but I do look forward to finding out. And it is over 350 pages. And the very last subject, yes, I know, that I wanted to take was Transfiguration. So the first book that you needed to read was to read a book that has an LGBTQ representation, and for that, of course, I had to read Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nyan. So this is a book about the main character of Lei, and she lives in a kingdom that is divided into castes. There are the demon caste, and then there are the ones that are half demon, half human, or at least have some demon in them, and then the lowest or paper caste are the ones that are full-blooded humans. So every year the emperor or king of this land chooses 8 girls to be his paper girls, and basically they are his concubines. So they spend a year servicing the king, and then they either get married off to someone else as a prize, or they become dancers, or they become whores, what have you. And this does have a girl-girl relationship when the character of Lei falls in love with one of the other paper girls, which of course is forbidden. So I've heard a lot of good things about this book. I do know that there are some trigger warnings, both for sexual assault and rape, and also for animal cruelty. So once I've read it, I will be able to let you know whether or not those triggers are there. I do know they are. So I do look forward to reading this, and there you go. And also, again, this is just a freaking gorgeous cover. Right, so the next book that I needed to read was one that is not the first in a series, and for that I am reading The Wicked King by Holly Black. So this, of course, is the second book in the series right after The Cruel Prince, so it fits that. I don't have high expectations for this book, so really it can only go up from here. So those are all the books that I definitely plan to complete in the month of August. I do have one final one if I'm not completely exhausted and I actually have the time. And to get an O in Transfiguration, you needed to read a book that is 500 pages or more, and for that I would be reading Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. So this, of course, is the third and final book in the Infernal Devices trilogy. Again, all I know is that it follows the same characters of Tessa, Jem, and Will as they battle evil and all that good stuff from the Shadowhunter Academy in London during Victorian times. Okay, so that is my massive TBR for the month of August. Granted, I do have at least 3 or 4 books on here that are really easy reads, and I will probably be picking up the audiobook for some of these. But I really look forward to doing my N.E.W.T.S. now that I'm actually doing it in the same month that everyone else is. I can actually follow along on Twitter and do some of the challenges, as well as the sprints or anything else that goes along with doing the N.E.W.T.S. And also, since other people will be doing them as well, I'll have some buddies. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to this month. I will be attempting to do some weekend reading vlogs. They will be the first ones I've ever done, so, you know, keep me in your prayers that I can actually get it done. So that was it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up in the description box down below. Also, feel free to subscribe to check out some more of my magical and book-related content, and to follow me as I try and get through this massive pile for my TBR. I enjoyed making this video. I look forward to my next one. Bye!